I'm Lyndal Osborne, and I'm an artist that considers herself an installation artist. But as you can see, I've had a long career, and I started out the first 35 years as a print artist. And it was really Roger Boulet, one of the curators at the art gallery, that set me off in a new direction. And that direction was to introduce sculpture into my work, and the sculptural forms became multitudinous until they grew into such a huge grouping that I suddenly had to think about installation. And I'd say that happened about 1996, which is the exact time that the work behind you was created. I am deeply involved with the environment. I've always lived in an area where I've been able to walk around the area on natural trails, and I'd say most of my practice up until about the year maybe 2005 was really based on nature, natural forms, sculptures that were created of materials that I found. But since then, I've become much more involved in issues that are pertinent to everyone in the world. The first one that was drawn to my attention was the use of genetic modification of seeds. And that I took a 10-year trip into exploring that, and I did a number of installations about that, about saving seeds. But because I come from Australia, I think I also became very aware of a fantastic reef called the Great Barrier Reef. And I saw the way the corals were being gradually bleached away, until I heard about 70% of the reef had disappeared. And that became a focus for another maybe 5 years, where I did work on things about the ocean acidification and the coral decimation. One of the major projects that came out of that was called the Coral Project. After that, I became interested in other natural things that were of interest to me because they were local to me. And I think most of the work I've explored in the last few years has been about the fact that the agricultural land around me has gradually become far more urbanized, and not in a really appropriate way, without consideration for what has been there, and what is being built is sometimes lacking in so many things that I think are so important to forming communities, like gardens, like open spaces, like walking trails, things that bring a community together. This work came out of a dream, and the dream told me that living in a city like Edmonton in the middle of winter, I could lose the key to my house and be locked out all night and be found frozen the next day. I had that as a recurring dream for probably a year. So when I moved into the country in 1990, the first thing I noticed were what they call shelter belts. And they were often built around homes, homesteads, often around farms, to protect them mostly from the winds. And I became obsessed with this shelter belt that was about 1 kilometre from my studio window. I studied it, and I thought, I'm going to create a wall that protects and shelters. And so I went out for 1 year and collected probably, I'd say 30 different varieties of trees and shrubs that just were around my area. I collected huge bundles of them. They'd probably be this big. And then I'd dry them on my veranda and then put my arms around them and shrink them as tight as I could and then bind them up. Bring them indoors after the winter and then do that process again. Shrink them again till they became very, very tight and dry, and they're bound with strings that go all the way up. And this became the wall that I thought of as a protection for my family. And so in that way, it became a very personal statement about the area that I live.